Hi everyone, it's Pippa here. I'm here to take some time to go through some more detailed instructions for downward facing dog. It's a great pose that we have in our yoga asana, and it's often one that we kind of slightly rush through. We don't have a lot of time to really go through the detail in our normal practice class. So here's a video for you just to explain some more detailed alignment cues and just tips and suggestions for the direction we're moving in our downward facing dog. Okay, so as we get into some of the detail of this, I suggest we head to the wall. So you want to set yourself up in a 90-degree angle. So 90 degrees between your upper body and your lower body. It can be quite difficult to feel. So if you have a mirror or maybe somebody else just to give you some clues and pointers, that's also helpful. So eventually getting into like an L shape between your upper body and your lower body. Energize your legs slightly and think about pushing the wall away through your hands and at the same time lengthening the sitting bones back behind you. Okay, so for some of us in this position, particularly if you're a little more inflexible in the shoulders, we end up rounding through the shoulders. You can see here the angle between my arms and my torso has decreased. So if you're hunching in the upper back here and rounding through the shoulders, there's lots of things you can do to increase your overhead flexibility. But you can just energetically think about lengthening or elongating the armpit. So increasing that angle, still pushing the wall away. Likewise, for more flexible students, we can sometimes end up sagging, like dipping in the shoulders and like hanging out here. So this isn't really what we want either in our downward facing dog, because it's not particularly supportive. The chest muscles are not really doing anything here. So we want to think about lifting the shoulder blades away from the front of the ribs and just lifting back up until we find this more neutral position. So another key area to just pay attention to in our downward facing dog is of course the lumbar spine in the lower back. So back onto the wall, finding your L shape in your body again. And this time, two things are quite common. One is a rounding of the lower back. So you feel like the spine is slightly rounded. And one way that we can take the strain out of this is to take the pull away from the hamstrings by just bending the knees and probably lifting the heels slightly. So then you've got a little more to work with in terms of the tilt of the pelvis, and you can tilt the pelvis forward just slightly and find that length once more in your spine. So bending the knees, lifting the heels, finding the forward tilt of your pelvis again, and thinking about sending in this position the sitting bones back. When you're in your downward dog, it's back and up slightly. Likewise, the reverse can also happen if you have a particularly arched lower back. We can have a tendency to drop into that flexibility and go into a kind of overarched position, also not quite what we're aiming for in our downward facing dog. So for here, to take the pressure away from the backs of the legs again still here, think about lifting the front of the rib cage up and dropping the sit bones down towards the back of your heels. So hand position and the shoulders in a downward facing dog in terms of internal or external rotation. So placing your hands on the floor about shoulder width apart and thinking that your index finger is pointing forward. Your hands are nice and stable and you're grounding down through the base of your index finger and the base of your thumb. For some people it might feel a little more comfortable to have the hands more turned out. So see how that feels in your body. Just keeping the base of the index finger and the base of the thumb pressed into the floor. In our downward dog, we're aiming for a slight external rotation of the shoulders so that we can release the neck and release the upper shoulders. So starting here, just have a look at the eyes of your elbow, so these inner parts of your elbow. Just notice how they can move in and out. Okay, so in our downward facing dog, we want them to kind of be at 45-degree angles, like they're kind of looking at each other out of the corner of their eye. So we can play around just with the elbows here, but to get that external rotation in the shoulders, it's quite helpful to bend the elbows and then scoop the elbows inwards. You might feel like some back muscles already start to activate there. So bend the elbows and then scoop them inwards. There's a slight feeling of pulling the hands towards each other. Keep the elbows slightly bent, so we're not looking at the elbows. And then when you're ready to come into your downward facing dog, we keep that feeling of external rotation so that the neck is relaxed, the upper back is quite free. So that's the difference between being here in your downward facing dog, where everything's kind of scrunched and bunched up, internally rotated, versus being here. So external rotation, the neck is free, there's some space. I'm still actively pressing the floor away through my hands, just like I was at the wall. So still nice and long and lifted here. And lastly, of course, the legs. So once you're in your downward facing dog, you've thought about all those things. We also just want to make sure that the lower abdominal area is switched on. So your pelvic floor muscles are lifted, your lower abdominal muscles are drawing in and up slightly so that the upper abdominal region can be free. Diaphragm can do its job to help you breathe. You also want to think about your inner thighs gently drawing in towards each other. At the same time, you're lengthening the tailbone away from the crown of your head. The arches of the feet are also active and engaged. You're not collapsing in the arches of the feet. So as the inner thighs draw towards each other, you'll notice perhaps that the inner arches also lift slightly. And you want to maintain that engagement. So there you have some tips and suggestions for your downward facing dog. I hope you find them useful. Please let me know how you get on, and if you've got any questions, just feel free to get in touch and ask me. Enjoy your practice, and thank you for joining. Namaste.